Hello everyone, welcome back. So today I want to talk a little bit more about SIG 320 fully cocked striker fired gun versus partially cocking guns like Glock style guns. So this is the third video I'm doing on this subject, and the reason why I'm doing it is because I have received some excellent comments with great information, with people posting lots of good information in the comments that I have been absorbing and studying further and researching. The thing here is, like, I am not committed to this is right or that's wrong or this is the way to do it. I'm kind of looking at this situation with the SIG 320 and basically just trying to learn from it. Okay, which I think what SIG should have been doing themselves, because I think when they started having problems a few years back, I think they were quick to dismiss it as user error, as did I. Right, when I first heard that SIG guns were having problems, I was thinking user error. I was thinking that the holster was faulty. It wasn't properly matched up to the gun. Something got in the holster. The shirt got caught between the holster and the trigger. So that's where my mind went. And it wasn't until actual videos started surfacing of the gun actually firing uncommanded. Like like one case was with police officers just brawling with somebody. At this point, like, I've started thinking, hey, maybe there's actually a problem with the gun. Okay, so this is like where SIG should have been from the very beginning. They should have been looking at this situation, trying to figure out what's happening, why is it happening, and I think this is the reason why SIG has been receiving a lot of flack. Not so much that they created a product that may not be perfect, but because of the way they handled it. Okay, so that's what the whole issue is. So like I said, this is the third video on the subject. In the first video that I did, my main focus there was like, okay, SIG 320, a fully cocked striker fired gun. Like, of course you're gonna have problems, right? The thing is all the way back under tension, and then there was a guy that posted a video where basically he had the gun like this. He picked up the slack on the trigger, wiggled the slide a little bit, and it went off. Okay. Now what he was doing, he just wasn't picking up the slack on the trigger. He was actually taking the screw and kind of building up a pressure in there. And it's possible that he went past the wall, right, when he was putting that screw in, right? Because I actually had somebody a couple of days ago. They had a SIG 365. Okay, so it's not a SIG 320. SIG 360. They had a SIG 365, and I did the same thing. I racked the slide, pulled back the. It's fully cocked, but there's still a little bit of play on the trigger. Brought it all the way back to the wall. Did this, and the gun didn't go click. Okay, so the 365 at least wasn't doing this. Same here with this Glock. If I wiggle it, it doesn't go click. Now, I have tried playing with this where if I try to go past the wall, if I try to build up a little bit more pressure, then and I start wiggling it, at a certain point, I can get this to go click. Okay, I can't do it every time. Can't do it consistently. Sometimes it's actually me pulling the trigger. But if you go past the wall and you wiggle the slide, I mean, yeah, you're gonna get it to drop. Okay, I think that's gonna happen with any gun, right? If you go past that wall, so I think that's kind of a question that needs to be considered. In fact, there was another guy. He did a video where he's doing the same thing. He's taking the screw. He's putting the screw, inside the trigger here, building up the pressure, and he's able to get a Glock and a SIG 320 to both go off when he. Okay, so I think that we kind of need to be realistic and fair. I think that we should, on any of these guns, we should rack the slide, pick up the slack without going past that point. We should be able to wiggle this, hit this, right, and the gun should, basically that sear should stay in place. Okay, because mind you, what's happening here is like you got the sear on the bottom, you got the firing pin lug here. So what's happening when you're wiggling the slide, right, comes back, hooks this, comes back. At some point, if you pull it back and you start wiggling it, I mean, yeah, that's, if you go back far enough, it's going to release it. I can see it. I can see that happening with any gun. Okay, so I think we kind of have to be fair there with like this wiggling action. Like, is this happening when you're going past the wall, right? Or is it happening when you're right at the wall and you're wiggling it? So I don't know. I don't have a SIG 320. The only reason why I never bought a SIG 320 is because I just thought it was overpriced. And I've got so many of these other guns. I built a ton of these Palmer 80s, which are like Glock clones. I just got so many of them that I never, at the time that the SIG 320 came out, that was adopted by the military, I just didn't see a point in spending extra money to buy what appeared to me to be another Palmer gun, right? Another Glock-like gun. At the time, I assumed that the internals worked the same. I was incorrect on that, but I kind of assumed it was the same. I knew it had a modular chassis, but I assumed that it still had the same internal safety features as a Glock, as most people out there, right? Lots of people out there will assume that a lot of these striker fired guns partially cock, and that's incorrect. So again, this is an opportunity for all of us to learn, to look at what we're carrying or look at what we're considering buying, and really understand how the gun works. Okay, now with the SIG 320, and I said this in a prior video, there was a couple of cases, I think, before the military adopted it. And again, I think in most of those cases, people said it's probably user error. It wasn't until the military actually adopted the SIG 320 that these problems started like really happening. And why is that happening? Well, when the military gets it, they're going to take these guns, they're going to use them, abuse them, misuse them, fail to maintain them, and also from the manufacturing side, right? As more and more of them are being produced for the purpose of going into the military, I suspect that quality control drops a little bit. Okay, so my thinking is that I think any gun that the military adopts is going to go through that same level of overuse, abuse, misuse, lack of maintenance, etc. And where I'm at right now, my thinking is, you know what, I would like, okay, I would like Glock to get a turn at this. Okay, I would because Glock, I think there's only like 2 cases or 2 reported cases of Glock accidents where people say it was actually the gun's fault, etc. I'd like the military to adopt the Glocks and just do what they do with it, and we'll see if the Glock design is actually a safer design or not. Okay, I think with any design, until it's used by the military, again, used, abused, mass produced, low quality control, I think that's when you find out if there's a problem with the gun or not. Okay, now when it comes to quality control, there's a bunch of guns out there, right, that I've run across over the years or have been produced over the years, where the gun was an excellent design, okay, but when they tried to mass produce the gun, it was really hard for the production department, right, or to build the guns to the exact specifications of the designers. Okay, so any gun that's going to be produced, is going to be mass produced, has to be designed in such a way that that the production team can actually mass produce it, and there's room for some quality control problems where if they arise, yeah, maybe the gun doesn't work, right, but the gun doesn't go off on its own. Okay, so that's so even like with the Glocks, because everybody's saying, okay, yeah, so the military should just now start using Glocks. Okay, and I'm going to say yes, I agree with that, but not because I'm a Glock fanboy, but because I'd like to see if this gun is actually as good as as Gustav Glock says that it actually is. Okay, and I don't think we're going to find that out until the military adopts it. Okay, so that's what my thoughts are on that. And again, I think we should kind of approach this with an open mind and not fanny boy any particular gun, right? Because you know, with the 1911s, we got 1911 here. I mean, these guns had problems, right? They had issues. A lot of GIs carried this on an empty chamber because they didn't trust the gun. Okay, and this gun has 2 external safeties. Now, uh, the backstrap safety here deactivates the trigger block. I'm trying to think of the right words for here, but the backstrap safety, when it's not engaged, blocks the trigger. Okay, whereas the thumb safety up here, that actually blocks the slide from moving back, but it also blocks the sear. Okay, so the sear can't move. So the thumb safety on the SIG 320 is just a trigger block. Okay, it does not stop the firing pin or the sear from moving. Okay, so that's one of the issues with the thumb safety on the SIG 320. Now, the problem I have run into with external safeties, okay, is that a lot of times, and this isn't watching people train, a lot of times they're off when you want them on when you want them off. So with like 1911s, I've seen people come out of holster, they hear, they go, oh shit, the gun's not working, oh shit, they forgot to take the safety off. Other times I've seen the gun in the people's holsters and the thumb safety is not engaged. Okay, I've also seen this on the Beretta 92s, right? Because a lot of people are like, why not go back to the Beretta 92, right? Because this has the safety here. Well, the way this works is you have to decock it, right, in order to lower the hammer, right, so that you can now holster it. Well, in practice, what I have seen many times under stressful conditions, people forget to decock it, okay, and what they'll do is they'll actually holster the gun, right, and the hammer's in the rear position. Okay, I've seen that a whole bunch of times, and that's really one of the reasons why I stopped using the Beretta 92 for training people, because I saw people do this. No matter how many times you tell them, if you put people under enough stress, they will forget to when they come out of the holster, they'll forget, because the way you're supposed to do is with this, the safety is supposed to be engaged, and you're supposed to come out of the holster, push with your thumb here, take the safety off. People forget to do that. And what I was having people do is just keep the safety off, because it's basically a double action. The first shot's double action, the hammer's down. So I didn't see a safety issue with that. So I would have people just run this gun with the hammer down. The issue that I ran into with this, when people would run the slide, a lot of times they would accidentally activate the safety, okay, and then they would go to shoot and they would have a dead trigger. Okay, so that's a problem that I ran into with this gun, and the problem with external safeties. With this gun, if you're gonna, you really shouldn't be running the slide, because you might accidentally hit the safety. You're supposed to hit the slide release here, but it's a very large paddle, so that's how you should put the slide into battery. However, again, sometimes people will run the slide, and what they'll do is they'll accidentally flip the safety on. Now, there's an aftermarket kit that you can get where when you decock it, it automatically pops up. Okay, I never got it installed on this, but that was to deal with this problem of people accidentally putting the safety on when they didn't want the safety on. Okay, so that was a problem that I ran into with training people on the Beretta 92, and in general, when I saw people shooting, including myself, with that first pull being a long, hard pull, and then the subsequent pull being a very short pull, a lot of times people would come out and they like squeeze the trigger, and it's like, oh shit, the gun's not shooting. Oh shit, we got to squeeze harder. And then they would squeeze harder, and they would like roll the gun down. And then what would happen is after that first shot, now they're kind of expecting the second shot to be a hard pull, so they're again rolling the gun down. So I could get people to, like, in a single training session, get used to it, but then let's say I saw them like 2 weeks later and they had forgotten it, right? Because unless you're basically practicing with that double action, single action almost every day, it's really hard to remember to to change from, to change your trigger pull from double action mode to single action mode. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I stopped using the double action, single action guns. For a while, I was using like this SIG 250, which I really like the gun a lot. So this is double action only. So every time you press this trigger, the hammer is going all the way back, all the forward. So it is a very consistent pull. It's the same consistent pull every shot, right? It's always going to be a long, hard pull. The pull on this is not so bad compared to like other guns that are double action. So it's pretty good. I really like this gun. It's actually, as far as double action only guns, this is the SIG 250 is my favorite gun. But one of the things I've noticed is like when people were shooting over 100 rounds, including myself, your finger starts getting tired, okay, because it's a long, hard pull. And by 200 rounds, people's proficiency, like their ability, like their aim, it started dropping as their fingers started getting more and more tired. So that's kind of the reason why I kind of moved away from the SIG 250, and I ended up with using mostly Glocks, because the Glocks, it's that same, you got a little bit of take up, right? You got a little bit of take up, you hit the wall, right, and then you got, you can break it. So that little bit of, like, I like the idea of the partial cocking. I felt like it was a good safety feature. Like, even if you're going to holster the gun, it will even if your shirt with let's say a snag on it or something, it's a little bit more forgiving. Okay. Now, as far as shooting this, like when you shoot this, you don't have to let your finger out all the way. You can just let it out to the reset, and then you could, so it's basically, you could turn this into a single action gun. So this is one of the things that came out. This came out of the second video that I did, because I had assumed that basically that when this gun was partially cocked, it didn't have enough energy in the striker to set off a round. And apparently I was incorrect on that, because somebody pointed me to a video where somebody's actually set up a test. Because when you partially cock it, it goes to, like, I think it's like 58%. And they did a test where they basically cocked it to 58%, released the striker, and it was setting off the rounds. They had set up a case with a primer, no bullet, no gunpowder. And they were able to repeatedly set it off. So again, this is why I say we need to kind of rethink what we're doing and kind of not take anything for granted. Because I had assumed that a partially cocked Glock could not set off a primer, and I'm wrong. I would like to see more people repeat that test. I might try to set it up myself at some point and test it out. But apparently it can. Now, it's got to. It's only partially cocked. I think that when it is partially cocked, there's less tension there, right? Again, just from my experience working with springs on different equipment, right, on farm equipment, etc. If you partially cock a spring, right, and then you or partially wind up a spring and you have it sitting there, it is not as likely to go off, right, as if you fully compress it or if you fully expand it, right? And then you have it like sitting on a ledge. If it's under full tension, it increases the chance that it is going to go off, versus if it is like under partial tension. Okay, so from my personal experience with springs, okay, I think that that same concept should apply to a handgun that is partially cocked, where even if the primer partially cocked here can set off that even if the gun is partially cocked and capable of setting off a primer, the fact that it is only partially cocked under partial tension, I think there's a less chance that it would slip off off of that sear if the gun was hit, abused, etc. Okay, so again, I don't think we're going to truly know the answer to that unless the military actually adopts the Glock, okay, and put it through its paces of use, misuse, abuse, lack of maintenance, etc. Only then will we be sure that the gun is as safe as Gustav Glock says that it is. Okay. Now, me personally, I do not use factory Glocks for my personal training or for training other people. One of the issues I have found is that the trigger guard is just way too small. And in the wintertime, a lot of times I'm training people like when it's like 10 degrees outside. And if you got a thick insulated glove, it doesn't fit very well into that trigger guard. So for that reason, I like using these Palmer 80s that have a much larger trigger guard, and you can fit a thick insulated glove in there, and people are able to shoot this, and I'm able to shoot this. So that's why I use Glock clones, not actual Glocks. Now, I have built these myself. I have built many of them. Okay, this is over here is just a small sampling of the ones that I have built. So this one has 10,000 plus rounds on it. This one has 10,000 plus rounds on it. This one does not. This one does not. There's actually two more somewhere that have about 10,000 or more rounds on it. I ran that up mostly in 2020 when I was just like really busy training people. At times I was going through like 4,000 rounds a month training people. So in order for me to build these guns, right? Because remember, you got to build the frame. You got to basically modify the frame. There's usually a debugging process. Okay, when I usually throw these things together, they don't work. There's usually a lot of slide drag. There's a lot of resistance. Okay, so when these guns like don't work, they just don't work. Okay, they don't fire on their own. Okay, I've never had a situation where the guns have fired on their own. I have had situations of 2 and 3 round bursts. I even had a situation of one of these guys dumping the entire magazine. The reason for that was I put in the plunger safety spring sideways, and that basically made the striker get stuck in the forward position. So what that would do is after you fired the first round, okay, it would get stuck forward, and then it would continue to slam fire the gun because the firing pin was stuck forward. Okay, and that was the result of the striker getting stuck forward. However, again, at that point, like, you're aiming at a target and pulling the trigger, the gun didn't fire on its own. And of course, because I'm building a gun, I'm going to fire at least 200 rounds on it before I determine that the gun is safe. Okay, so the situation here, and also at the time I wasn't using factory parts, because in 2020, 2021, you couldn't get factory parts. So I'm using like the cheapest eBay crap that I could get, and sometimes the firing pin heads would break. I showed that in the prior video. But despite these guns being built, these Glock style guns being built to like with the cheapest possible parts I could get, which is the only thing I could get at the time, the guns didn't shoot on their own. Okay, so like I said, obviously the military's not going to use P80s, but I would like them to adopt a Glock and run it through its paces. Mass produce this, put this into the hands of guys that like to paint rocks and chew on crayons, and let's see how reliable this thing actually is. I mean, I think that would be the ultimate test. Oh, speaking of partially cocked firearms, with this cap and ball revolver, right? The safety on this is the half cock position in terms of, right? That's where you put this to load the gun. Okay, so it's partially cocked, and then in order to once you load this up, you go to full cock, and then you decock this and you put this on an empty chamber. If you're going to carry this, right? So that's so. But the point is that the half cock position, especially like on flintlocks, right? Because with a flintlock, if you think about that, if you're going to carry that, right? So you put the powder in the pan. You go to, you put the gun on half cock. It basically stays on half cock the whole time, partially cocked the whole time until you're ready to fire the gun, and then you go to full cock. So the partial cock for a long time, going back to the flintlock days, was considered the safety position on firearms. Now on the 1911 actually does have a partial cock there, right? And then that's your full cock. So there was people that were actually carrying the 1911 partially cocked. I never quite saw the benefit to this because you got to round the chamber. What do you got to do? You got to come out and now you got to fully cock this. That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Again, not something I recommend, not something I ever did, but I have heard of people carrying the 1911 with a round the chamber partially cocked. And I don't know how they got that because when you put it around the chamber and you close it, you got full cock. So now you got decock this and then go to partial cock. That doesn't make sense. If I was going to carry this, if I didn't trust the gun, I would basically carry this on an empty chamber, and then when you come out of the holster, just run your slide. I mean, that's what I would do with this. I did actually do a couple of classes way back. We're going back like 18 years now, where I did use a 1911. And what I did is I used a holster that had a hammer strap that went between the hammer. It basically blocked the hammer because at the time I didn't trust the 1911 with a rounded chamber. It just, again, I just for whatever reason, call it inexperience at the time, right? Because I was fairly new at the time. We're going back 18 years. But that's how I carried the 1911 when I did for this class. I carried it with a safety strap over here. It actually took a long time before I built up the confidence to actually carry a Glock style gun, and that wasn't until I built these guns, because I built this gun over here, and that's when I fully understood how the internal safeties worked on that. Prior to that, I was carrying a double action only gun. Okay, so. Again, trying to learn from this situation with SIG 320, I would like them to actually adopt the Glock so we can see how safe this thing actually is. And if it fails for whatever reason, if it turns out that it is not safe under those type of conditions, and I do know that there's certain branches of the military that do use Glocks, but again, it hasn't been used on a wide enough scale where it's in the hands of people that, paint rocks and chew on crayons. So I would like to see it used on that scale. If it fails for whatever reason, I guess the answer, because I wouldn't want to go back to a Beretta 92, because again, there's the whole issue with decocking this. It's just a training nightmare, even for experienced people. I take somebody that's experienced, that has shot the gun hundreds of times, knows how it works, and if I put him under enough stress, get him to think about other things, I have seen them forget to decock the gun when they holster it. So if that doesn't work, if the Glock option doesn't work, I would say go to like the SIG 250, double action only. That may be the solution, right? So again, I'm approaching this from the position of like I don't know what the answer is, but let's figure it out. Let's open ourselves up to different possibilities, to testing things out, which is the opposite of what I think SIG did. Let's not assume that the gun that we carry, right? Again, the gun that I carry, Glock 43, right? Let's not assume that it is as safe as maybe we thought it was, right? Because up until just a few days ago, I didn't think that this gun could set off a primer when it's partially cocked, and apparently I found out that I was wrong. I saw a video that it can set off a primer from the partially cocked position. So let's try to do some more testing and some more experimentation and figure out what the right solution here is, right? But most importantly, like whatever you're carrying, it's worth learning exactly how that gun works internally, how the internals work. What are the safety mechanisms? So the primary safety mechanism of this Glock 43 that I carry is the holster, right? That's what protects the trigger guard, right? There's no external safeties. The holster is the primary safety mechanism. Then you've got your trigger safety, right? Which basically, if my shirt or something gets caught up on it, hopefully the trigger won't move back. The partial cocking allows for, I'm no longer going to say that it doesn't have enough energy to set up a primer, but there's a much wider margin for error because that has to move back further before it jumps off the sear, okay? And then the firing pin block, right, which is the final safety. Let's get another one open. So this is one of the things that you gotta test every time you clean your gun. You gotta make sure that that firing pin block is actually working, right? So when you press it, like right now, just because I dry fired it, you can see how the firing pin is forward. But when I pull it back, right, you see how that how the safety plunger popped out. Well, now if I push forward on the striker fire lug here, it doesn't move forward unless I push on that on the plunger, and now it can move forward. So you gotta actually test this out. Now on the SIG 320, it's actually part of the firing pin mechanism. It's like way back over here. So just like looking at it, it just doesn't seem like a good idea. First of all, the spring seems really small and flimsy. I can see how, because this area over here with because it's actually, let me open up the 250 because it's very similar to the 250. So you can see on the 250, SIG 250, how that safety is like way back over here. Okay, so now this is hammer fired, so the hammer hits it right there, right? That's where the hammer hits the back of the firing pin. But on the striker fire gun, because it has to have a firing pin lug, right, that moves back and forth like this one does over here, and then the plunger, the firing pin block is right next to it. This is a much open area over here. So this area here, this, you know, because this has to move back and forth, being a lot more open, I can see how like dirt and carbon buildup can enter this area, and if that's where your firing pin block is, I can see how that could possibly be a problem. With the Glock design, your firing pin block is way up here. It's much more closed. It's really hard for dirt or carbon buildup to get in there and interfere with that plunger safety. So I think that's one of the issues that that SIG is having with the SIG 320s and the firing pin block not doing its job. Okay, you know, there's probably a lot of dirt built up in that area. It's probably getting stuck in the open position, and then, you know, gun gets bumped or whatever. You know, the firing pin jumps off the sear and basically sends a bullet. Okay. So anyway, drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think. But again, I really appreciate the comments I have been receiving, and I've learned from them. It's sent me off in different directions to do different research, and I think that's the purpose of these videos. Like, I don't monetize this channel. I don't make any money off of this, but I do learn a lot from this. Just by doing these videos, I learn a lot because it forces me to do research. I get input from you guys. I do more research. So that is the benefit that I get from these videos, right? It's not just me teaching people, it's also people teaching me. Okay, so drop some comments. Talk to you all soon. Hey everyone, I want to cut in here real quick and talk about the safety on an AR-15. Okay, so that is just a trigger block. So the question becomes, why is that acceptable? Okay, so normally with your rifle, you're not going to load it, right, and charge it, right, unless you're actually in a combat zone or you're going to shoot it, right? So even like in a home defense situation, you normally keep it unloaded, right? And then let's say, you know, the threat level goes up, you go to your safe, you get the gun, then you load it, okay? As opposed to your pistol, which is like normally loaded all the time, right? Because when I go home, I don't unload the pistol. It stays in the holster. The holster goes in the safe. Next morning, I'll take the safe, take the holster out with the gun in it, and I'll put it back on my belt. With a pistol, I could be, you know, sitting in front of my TV with my legs up, and the holster with the barrel inside could be pointing towards the TV. Maybe somebody crosses in front of me, so now the barrel is pointing at this person. So that's the reason why we generally hold pistols to a higher safety standard, because we carry them around loaded all the time, right? As opposed to our rifles, which we generally don't load until we're going to shoot, or until the threat level, until some threat level actually exists.